My idea of being successful as a lawyer was so black and white.
Getting through law school in and of itself.
Or not practicing law for almost 4 years makes me a better lawyer now.
Did you feel like there was a pressure to get back into law?
Like, I'm not gonna be a lawyer, but like, this is quick too.
First of all, this is the practice.
Been a lawyer for like an hour and I'm already not practicing.
And it lasted 10 months. I was like, I'm never putting up with that again.
Hindsight's always 20/20 though, right?
Why can it be so toxic?
Burnout?
Growing up, like, I thought that's what I wanted.
Yes and then no and then yes again.
Deal breakers, main titles, take number 510.
Camera. Am I saying that right? Camera. Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Non-Billable Hours. My name is Odette, and I am the host around here.
You went like that. I was just stretching these parts of my arms.
Before we go any further, I'm going to ask you, if you're watching, which if you aren't, I don't know how you'd get this message, please hit the like button. And if you're feeling generous, the subscribe button. I know what you're thinking, Odette, I haven't even watched the episode yet. Why should I like it? 2 reasons. Number 1, you can always unlike it after. If you get to the end of the episode, you hated it for whatever reason, you don't like my self-trimmed bangs, you can rescind your like. So there are free refunds. But number 2, you have to pay up front.
But you can give them to the birds and bees. I want money. That's what I want.
And that's all I want to say about that. We are here today with our 5th guest. I can't believe it's 5 already. She and I have known each other since our law school days. She did not practice law for a little while, and now she is back practicing and loves it. Maybe. We're going to find out. She's bright. She's sweet. Her fashion sense is amazing. And she brought me a gift. So I'm keeping her. Welcome, my fellow Western Law alumni, Katharine-Brickman Miller. Hey.
Hi.
Hi. How are you doing?
I'm good. Thank you so much for having me.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here. Is it alumni or alumnus? And I really want to open this gift.
Please.
Love the bag.
I know, isn't it cute?
It's so cute. It's soft. Christmas. Oh my God.
You have a podcast, you gotta have merch.
Oh
so
my God.
A little custom merch just for you. It's one of a kind.
This is my first custom merch. Thank you so much.
Oh, you're so welcome. I'm happy you like it.
Oh, I love it. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
I'm going to put it on after this. It looks really cozy. So I have some questions for you. And this has to be one of my favorite ones that I like to start off with. Did you always know that you wanted to be a lawyer growing up?
So yes and then no and then yes again. I decided I wanted to be a lawyer pretty young, like 10 or 11. Maybe or maybe not inspired by Legally Blonde.
You got into Harvard Law?
What, like it's hard?
But I've always really liked to talk and argue and, not argue in a confrontational way, but in a logical kind of that sort of way. And so, from a young age, I think that really appealed. I've always loved to read. Like, I feel like I had all of the interest kind of leading into it.
Yeah.
But then I kind of went down some weird path in high school where I got it into my head that I wanted to be a doctor. Despite being like a raging hypochondriac and having an aggressive fear of like blood and needle phobia, it didn't really make any sense. And I'm a germaphobe. There was nothing that would suggest that I should be a doctor. But I like really pivoted, was doing all these advanced biology, advanced chemistry classes, all this stuff.
Really? Good for
you.
Like
doubled down on it. Not sure why. And then graduated from high school to major in English Lit because I realized that was just not, the medicine thing was not going to happen.
Right.
And so then kind of went into university being like, I think I'm going to go back to plan A.
Being a lawyer had better be awesome.
You know what's funny? You are not the first person that I've talked to on the podcast who wanted to be a doctor growing up.
Oh, really?
I also had a stint where I wanted to be a doctor until I started to try and make my way through that MCAT book.
Oh, you got far enough to go through the MCAT book?
Well, far enough to buy it. And then
That's far.
Like,
that's farther than me.
It's like, this is not happening.
Yeah.
I was looking at undergrad schools where I could do kind of like a pre-med program, but that didn't have to do chemistry. And then I was like, if I hate chemistry this much to avoid it, then I shouldn't be a doctor. Like, our doctors should not hate science.
Fair. That's probably fair.
Is Legally Blonde your favorite legal movie now? Or would you say
No, I
it's
think
different?
somewhere along the line, my taste probably became a little bit more, I'm trying to think.
Dramatic.
Yeah, dramatic. I like some of the drama ones. What's coming to mind is Suits, which was a ridiculous show. But what I liked about it was the kind of like office politics, the dynamics of the practice.
Yeah.
The kind of like being in the day-to-day of lawyering.
Yeah.
That kind of thing.
Whose story is looking more far-fetched now? Oh, no answer? Great. No more questions, Your Honor.
And I think I liked it for that because it was one of the first shows I'd ever seen that really did that. The way, like, there's tons of medical shows like that. Ridiculous or not, they kind of give you that lens into the day-to-day workplace.
Yes.
And Suits did that for law, which I appreciated.
And honestly, every episode was so filled with drama that it might as well have been an hour-long movie.
It's true. It's true.
Those were heavy.
They were heavy. They would go from like criminal law to like corporate law, like 2 minutes. It was just,
And then like something would happen and then they're at trial like 2 days later for it. And I'm like, that's not how it happens.
That's probably not how that happens.
You film in Toronto. That's not how it happens here. You're getting a trial date in 3 years.
Yeah.
I was the same. I left Suits. The more dramatic, the better, which is so funny because now I hate drama at work.
Okay.
Like I don't want anything to do with it.
Right,
I avoid
right.
all of it. But growing up, like I thought that's what I wanted. But I don't think you love drama. Like you're not a dramatic
No.
in life.
Certainly not in real life.
No.
I mean, in TV, oh yeah. I love a good, like, terrible reality show with everybody's messy drama. But no, in real life, I steer very clear from it.
The way that people spoke to each other, like speak to each other in like legal dramas, like that would never.
It would never, ever happen.
Everything that guy just says bullshit. Thank you.
Okay, so you and I went to law school together. Looking back, like not academically, but what was the most challenging part of law school for you outside of the classroom?
I don't know. Like now I consider myself a very extroverted, outgoing person. I don't know that I was then.
Okay.
I think I was kind of shy. I think it was a little intimidating. I found it a little intimidating to have come from undergrad where everybody was basically the same age and in the same place in life to an environment where I came straight from undergrad. So I came into law school at like
Smarty
22
pants.
with like no life experience, no job other than like little summer jobs.
Yeah.
And like the impressive range of things that our classmates had done, careers, other
I had
school.
a literal surgeon in my small group.
There was a detective somewhere in our class.
What?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure, maybe it was the class ahead of us. Someone in law school was a detective and had been sent back by the London police for some sort of like promotional opportunity on the administrative side. Yeah, there were some impressive people.
Stop.
Yeah, those are some extreme examples. But even people who had just like worked for a couple of years, like I think I found that very intimidating, especially when it came around to like OCIs and job interviews and all those sorts of things. Because it's like they're talking about their job experiences and I'm talking about like Model United Nations.
Hey, leave her alone.
You leave her alone.
First of all, love that you were Model UN.
Oh, yes.
When
Very
I learned
nerdy.
that about you, I was like, because I was in student government, which is different, but I was just like, we're both
But like
dorks.
we're cut from the same cloth. That's a
Yeah.
very similar kind of, interest pattern. And it was great. I loved it. But like, yeah, in the context of coming in law school right out of undergrad, like it was intimidating. And so I think I was a little shyer than I may have been had I come in a few years later.
That's fair. You know what's funny? I actually had the opposite experience. So I did 5 years of undergrad and then I had a gap year. So I came in a little bit older and with some work experience under my belt. And I actually found the people who rolled right in from undergrad intimidating because that was my goal. That was my original plan. I wanted to do 4 years of undergrad and go right. I didn't want to waste time. So silly. You're in your 20s wasting time.
Don't ask for more. I'm wasting my time.
So I found people who executed my plan
Right.
intimidating.
So funny how that perception is so personal and you never really talk about it. It just sort of was there in your own head.
No one shows up at law school and is like, hi all, I'm intimidated by all of you because we've got a detective and a doctor.
And I'm just like,
You get to law school and you're like, oh, hi.
oh, okay. Cool.
So it's funny that we literally had the opposite experience, but like I was intimidated by people on your path and you were intimidated by people and there's no reason.
No, there's
by
no
what?
reason for it. I mean, we all got in on our own kind of characteristics that we brought that Western thought would round out the class.
Exactly.
So
no, it's
in
true.
hindsight, hindsight's always 20/20 though, right?
You look at the legal profession and I feel like it has definitely become more diverse since from when we started, but you don't get there by having, like a homogenous law class, right?
Yeah.
you didn't practice law for a little while. So going back to finishing law school, you're graduating. What was your articling like? And did you plan on practicing law when you graduated?
Yeah, so I articled for the government at a government agency, doing a lot of like, it was actually, my articling term was very litigation focused, which wasn't really an area I expected to go towards. It just kind of worked out that way.
Right.
Because it was a regulatory agency, and so there was never any court. It was the tribunal. So you do all the tribunal rules. But the rule is that you can, like an articling student can represent almost an entire hearing.
Yeah.
Like you don't need to be supervised. So it was a cool opportunity because there was a lot of independent appearances that I got to do.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it wasn't really what I wanted to do. It's just, it worked for the agency to send me to a lot of these things because they're like, great, articling student can take these on. We have an extra kind of hands on deck.
Right.
But then by the end of it, I'd sort of built up this experience that didn't really align with what I was interested in. Not intentionally, it just kind of happened that way. And so there wasn't an opportunity to be hired back. They had enough kind of litigators. And I really hadn't built up that experience sort of on the more policy side. So I was looking for jobs elsewhere. And then an opportunity came up to stay at the agency I was at as a policy advisor. So not practicing. And I was so torn about it because I had always seen myself as a lawyer. Like it felt so strange to walk away from that before having even practiced. But I was also very anxious about like not being employed and not having a job and getting to the end of my articling without something to go to. So I took the job, and the timing actually was great because it was just at the time that beer and wine and grocery stores was being legalized. So that was the file. So it was actually very interesting. It was new. It was, exciting. It needed someone with a bit of a legal understanding to kind of navigate the rules. But it was really hard. Like I remember going to call to the bar, and I just started this job, and it was like, everybody else is going to their call to the bar, either with these lawyer jobs or having already started these lawyer jobs. And here I am. And like, I've been a lawyer for like an hour and I'm already not practicing.
I will say I went to my call to the bar without a job lined up.
A lot of people
So you weren't
did,
the only one,
I
but you
didn't
felt
know
like
that,
you were the only
but
one.
I felt like I was the only one because
Yeah.
it was something that I had, tried so long and specifically to get into.
Yeah.
And now here I was already not in it. And
Right.
so the theme of my career, to be honest, is hindsight is 2020. Because a lot of the things that happen next have
I'll get
ended
that on
up
a t-shirt
really
for you.
working out. Right? Have ended up really working out well, but obviously I couldn't see that at the time.
Right.
So I ended up staying in policy for about 4 years. And honestly, it was such a strange balance between being very unhappy and insecure and also really advancing my knowledge in a regulated industry and, making good contributions to it while trying to hide from everybody that I was unhappy about it. So I had good relationships with my colleagues. I didn't want to make that a point of tension by like, oh, well, she doesn't really want to be here.
Right.
And
Even though it's nothing against them, it's like you went to law school planning to be a lawyer.
Exactly.
And you weren't currently a
exactly.
lawyer, and you're allowed to have your feelings about that.
Exactly.
Right?
And so, but I don't know, somewhere I struck this balance in a way that I kept it pretty hidden, at least from the people who I needed to keep it hidden from.
Right.
I had my friends, I had kind of people in my support network to rely on and be a little bit more venty about it. But yeah.
And so what was your goal? Like what was when we were going through OCIs and infirms and everything? Because I was looking at, and I didn't even know what this was. I just wanted to do corporate law.
Okay.
I didn't know what the fuck that meant. I had
Do
no
any of us know
idea.
what it is? They don't tell you in law school like what any of these things are.
No.
You're just like,
No one tells you. There's not a single time in law school where anyone came to us and say, here are some options.
right. No, none of
Here are
that.
some choices. This is what litigation means.
Right.
This is what being a solicitor means.
PC load letter? What the fuck does that mean?
Different types of law. I didn't know what corporate meant. I just knew I wanted to do it.
Right.
This is stupid. The amount that I research and plan for so many things in my life, Catherine, this was not. So what was your end game at that point?
At that point, I think my end game was also corporate law.
Okay.
And I also
yes.
didn't really know what that meant. I'd spent one summer working at an entertainment company downtown.
Was that right after 1L or 2L?
It was summer after 1L. It was, I think I thought that's what corporate law was.
Right.
But And in hindsight, it's like, yes, of course, what I do now is actually closer to the kind of things I was exposed to then. And so I thought that was corporate law. But like, then I was doing OCIs and all this stuff for like Bay Street law firms. It just wasn't a fit. Like, I just wasn't a match. Like, didn't belong on Bay Street practicing law.
Look, I'm just trying to ditch the cops, okay? I don't really care if you let me in or not.
But I didn't really know where I wanted to end up instead. There's not like a plethora of in-house jobs for brand new lawyers. I think I graduated from law school without an articling job. Some of the government agencies hadn't participated in that original kind of ministries hire. The agency where I ended up articling, they did their hiring process much later.
So you articled, you got called to the bar, you like wrote the bar, you passed all that stuff. So technically you could practice as a lawyer, and then you started working for the same government agency
in policy.
Did you feel like maybe you were not going to become practice law ever again, or were you always looking for an angle to get back into law?
I mean, I was, but it was just like not happening. Like I had a spreadsheet of all the jobs I was applying to and occasional interviews, but it was like, honestly, it was hard because it was like, how do you prove to a law firm or even an in-house company that you are so junior, you have not practiced at all, but you're capable of just like shifting from this non-legal role into law. Right. And so at a certain point, like probably a year or two into this, I was like, okay, this is probably just not happening. And like, that's okay. I can build out a career as a policy professional. Like, you know, I was interested in the work.
Yep.
And, you know, I realized somewhere along the line there that I really enjoyed working with the government.
Yeah.
Like I liked that kind of like public interest angle of it and sort of the impact that you could see of what you were doing. Somewhere along that I was kind of like, okay, like I guess I'm going to keep trying because this is what I really want.
And at some point you switched over into the cannabis
So
industry.
that honestly, like I have to credit the cannabis industry with like bringing me back to law. So cannabis was legalized in 2018. And so in the lead up to that, the agency I was working for had started to kind of think about it because they were like, okay, like if it's legalized, we'll probably have some role given that we're the regulator for these other regulated industries, alcohol, gaming.
Yeah.
So we should start thinking about it. So they assembled like a few people from the organization to start to ideate and kind of brainstorm like what this framework would look like. And so I got chosen to be part of that group. That was great. It kind of got me into that field and started to help me build out that expertise before the legislation had even been finalized to legalize it.
Right.
And so then I was able to move laterally to another agency and kind of like the one that is now the cannabis kind of wholesaler. And so had an opportunity there again before legalization in the months leading up to it, kind of like orchestrating, you know, what that framework was going to look like when there were cannabis stores, which at the time were going to be government run. Well, this whole time I was building out the skill set that really had nothing to do with law, but was so reliant on an understanding of the law.
And don't know, I know the law.
In the moment, I don't think I appreciated it.
Right.
I think I was just kind of like, okay, like this is my career now. Like I'm not gonna be a lawyer, but like this is cool too.
Yeah.
And just sort of finding the silver lining. But then I realized that like this skill set and this industry exposure was pretty unique. So I started to apply and reach out to licensed producers and entities sort of in the private space.
Yeah.
And started to get a few interviews because, you know, it was there weren't that many people who knew anything about it yet.
Right.
So it was, you know, to some extent like right place, right time.
Absolutely. But also like your tenacity and like not giving up.
Oh, thank
and
you.
angling to be like, okay, I want to be a lawyer and this is my experience, this is what I know, blah, 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 like, and this seems like a good fit, and like putting yourself out there. It's funny that like weed is the reason you got back into law because like it's a gateway drug.
Yeah, it's right. That is funny. It's a gateway drug that I don't even consume. I know so much about it.
I know.
But I'm not a consumer. It's just, I don't know. It's pretty funny. It is so embedded in my career and my knowledge. I love the smell of cannabis, like fresh and dried cannabis. Yeah, I think it is a lovely herby smell. I just don't use it.
That's fair. You would love Oshiega.
Sugar high.
Did you talk to anyone who had like left the legal world in a sense and gone back, or was this all just you?
I can't think of anybody who I know who had left and come back. I knew a number of people, and I had some phenomenal mentors in the government who left and didn't come back.
Okay.
Like one of my bosses, while I was in policy, had also been a lawyer. And he left to pursue policy. And so that I found him very inspiring. And that was like, you know, a really positive mentorship because it was like, okay, like he has a great career. Like this, I could emulate this, you know, and be okay with not going back to law.
Yeah.
And so experiences like that were quite positive. And there were a few people kind of throughout government. There's actually a fair amount of like leaving law to go to policy jobs in government because it's an opportunity to move up. It's an opportunity to, you know, have people management and leadership in a way that you don't always have practicing.
I think it is rare. Like I don't know of a lot of people who have left law to do something else for a while and then come back. And you're an example that it is possible and it's totally doable if you are willing to just kind of look at how you can navigate your way back in and not being like, well, I'm not a lawyer right now, so I'm never going to be a lawyer.
I remember the first contract I reviewed for, I don't know, some service provider we were retaining. He called me and he was like, okay, this is like really marked up. Like you got to kind of pick your battles here. Like,
oh yeah, you were saying
so
you
nice
had gone to town on it.
I got to town on it. It was like a simple thing, but like, you know, you're just kind of thinking the way like a student would. Like I'd never practically done that before.
Who had though? Like no one.
I guess. But it was also like this odd dynamic of like, because by this point, like I would have been the equivalent of like a 5-year call, but really had never practiced.
Right.
So it was like being a new call with like 5 years of experience with a ton of niche expertise in something that was valuable to them.
Exactly.
But there were skills that were missing.
Right.
Like, yeah.
So you say they took a chance, but I would say that they probably knew exactly what they were doing because they can teach how to mark up a contract. They can
and that's what he
you,
said, which I was like, okay, no, thank you.
And then they saw the Model UN experience and they're like, this one.
Right.
This girl.
Yeah, that's still on my resume for sure.
What was there like? So, sorry, this is a side note.
Yeah.
Model UN. Were you a country?
Oh yeah.
Which country were you?
Country. I did 3 throughout university. Okay. Honestly, this is like the nerdiest thing I've done, but I love it. Absolutely loved it. So one year we were Bhutan. I think I was Belgium one year. I did 3 big ones.
All the bees.
What was
the next one?
China, which was very, very intimidating. I was like, wow, I don't know how we went from Belgium to China. Yeah, that was a little intense, honestly. But like some of these kids take Model UN very seriously. Like this, like I was doing this in university, so I was at Queen's, but we would do these Model UNs internationally. Like we went to Harvard.
I don't need backups. I'm going to Harvard.
And Princeton for these conferences. They were amazing. They were like very well organized conferences, but like they were also full of these like very brilliant Ivy League students. So at the China one, I remember someone asking if we could like conduct the session in Mandarin. I was like, what? Well, no, that's nice that 3 of you speak Mandarin, but nobody else does.
I know it's Model UN, but it's not real UN.
Right, it's not real UN. And they were just showing off. It was like, you know, white kids from Yale and Princeton who were like...
That wanted to speak Mandarin.
Yeah.
Oh, go fuck yourself.
You want everyone to know that you speak Mandarin.
Yeah. More of a comment than a question.
Yeah.
Like, are there like adult Model UNs or is it...
No, I think that's definitely an interest point from the past. I did actually... When I was looking for jobs kind of after articling, I did apply for and somehow got an internship at the UN, like the real UN.
Holy cow.
But I turned it down because that would have been an incredible opportunity. But it was like unpaid in Manhattan.
Oh.
I was like, okay, this is very lofty. But like, well, you had to just be broke. Like I don't know how I would live in New York City making no money. I mean, yeah, no, I took the policy job at the agency instead. And that kind of one thing led to another to kind of get me to where I am now. So it's funny how those things kind of fall into place.
I think everyone can think this way, but I think lawyers especially, like sometimes there's that one job that you had the opportunity to take that you're like, what would my life would probably look so different. Like I feel like if you would have taken that, I almost said Model UN, real UN, real UN job in Manhattan, your life probably could have been the same. Like you might be sitting here with me now, but you could be working at The Hague. You could be speaking Mandarin.
It would have gone a very different pathway, right? It would have been like public international kind of NGO. I don't think that would have been where I would have stayed.
That's fair.
But
that's fair.
Yeah.
I had I got an interview with the JEG like with the Army
cool.
when I was
wow.
applying.
That's really cool.
Yeah, and because I was obsessed with A Few Good Men and G.I. Jane and all of those Renaissance man.
To be MC Hobbs on the job, ripping rhymes like the mob. The shit's iller than Cape Fear, the Shakespeare saga. Started with this Prince kid, his mom's and his father.
Like none of those are based in reality, and none of those would be like working at the JAG. But when I was applying to jobs, I cast a wide net, and I thought that would be interesting. And then I learned that in order to do that, you had to go live in Quebec and do the same general cadet training that all of the actual infantry would have to do.
So
for
I
6
did.
months.
I was just going to ask, did you get far enough down this path to do basic training?
No. But I was like watching videos about it. I was like, I was training. I was like, how many push-ups and how many sit-ups do I have to know how to do? And I was like literally practicing my push-ups and sit-ups. And then I got hired at Desjardins. And I was like, never doing another push-up.
That's so, I love that though. Yeah. I love that you thought about it.
I did. Well, again, plan. I'm a planner. But when it came to the type of law I thought I wanted to do for the rest of my life, I didn't bother to look up like what mergers and acquisitions actually means.
Yeah.
I was just like, I want to do that.
I mean, you think they would have like taught us that in law school?
How to practice law?
They didn't teach you that in law school either?
I have one of my favorite lines from Cousin Vinny is like, law school, they teach you like theory and then you get hired and they teach you procedure. And I didn't know what that meant until I literally, my first day of articling, I showed up to the office and they're like, okay, you're going to go do a motion. And it was an uncontested, like, show up in front of the now associate judge, then master, and just be like, hey, can I have my order? And they'll be like, yes.
Right.
And that's it. But I was terrified. I was like, no, there's no way. They're joking. They're joking. They're not going to send me to court my first day. No, of course they do.
Oh, wow.
It's like,
that's intimidating.
It is intimidating. It was no Model UN. Honestly, I love that. I kind of want to learn more about it. But is it big in the States? Because like here, like for example, like sororities and fraternities aren't big here. But in America, it's everything. And I think, well, if these people are speaking Mandarin, then maybe
it's true. Maybe it is. I mean, this was sort of an insular, like Ivy League contingency. Like there weren't a ton of American schools. I think like in Canada, like there's so fewer universities, right? So like Queen's and McGill, and like we'd get spots because I think they liked having like an international presence.
Right.
But yeah, I guess it was kind of big within the Ivy League circuit.
Did you feel like there was a pressure to get back into law that was external, or did you not feel any of that? Like everyone saw me go to law school and now No, it was all me. Good.
Like my parents were very supportive. I think they liked that I was working for the government because it was kind of like, you know, an interesting job with, you know, stability and a pension and all those sorts of great things. Like those were positive enough attributes of work, and the work was meaningful enough that like, no, there was no external pressure from anyone other than me. And then to the extent that I, you know, I guess felt that sense of like, I'd still go to law events like with classmates.
Nice.
But always with this sense of like inferiority and having to like justify, you know, I work here, but I'm not practicing. And there was always this kind of like need to kind of couch it in an explanation. But no, that was just all very much from me in my own head and my own kind of like, you know, this was something I really wanted and I'd worked hard for it, and I'd got in my head that this is what I was going to do and had this idea of how that career was going to shape out. It was an occupation that like I had picked and I'd gone to school specifically for it. And so I expected that to fall a certain way.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, it was all very much from me and my own expectations of myself.
You found your way back to law, but I think like even if you hadn't, I hope that you would still be proud of yourself, because getting through law school in and of itself.
Yeah, that's an accomplishment. We should all be very proud of ourselves.
People need to be proud of that. Like whether or not they're still practicing, I feel like I'm not proud of this, but as a student, I would judge people who didn't cut it on Bay Street, despite the fact that I had never actually made it to Bay, like I hadn't made it to Bay Street. I was a student, but like if I had learned that someone had gone and then like chose another route, whatever, I just thought that like that was the pinnacle. That was
totally
the definition of success. And anything away from that is because someone failed out of that and into something else. And that is such a judge. I hate that I felt that way, because now I want nothing to, I would never want that life for myself. And if people have that life, that's great. But for me, I thought that that was the only.
So did I.
Yeah.
So did I. And I really think like in hindsight, I think a lot of that was the way law school was set up. I'm not saying the law schools drove that, but the process is in place to help find a job, sort of drive that impression, right?
Yes.
It's like you go to OCIs and it's the big firms on Bay Street.
Yes.
And that is who is present. And that is who is hiring in this sort of very formalized process. And so that's where the supports come in. And like anything beyond that, you're really on your own to kind of like suss it out and seek it out and kind of find, you know, almost like off script.
Yes. Yeah.
Like the script is Bay Street.
Oh my God, that's such a good way to put it.
And so I think that's it. And like, I don't think that's specific to our law school. I think they're all like that because that process is at least Ontario law schools.
Definitely. And the firms, if you were there past 7 buying you dinner, right?
Yeah.
Like I remember that was such a selling factor.
Right. It was like, really? Like
in firms?
Terrible.
Like going around and then being like, well, the firm caters lunch and if you're here after 7, you can order dinner. And it's like, because they don't want you to leave.
Right. And then a taxi shit. Well, yeah, because then we're walking home in the middle of the night alone. Like that's not.
If you die, they have to replace you. Like a taxi's way cheaper.
Yeah.
But I thought like that was cool.
Right. Like, so did I. So did I. Because they're selling it that way. And like, we don't know any better. Like we're, you know. We think this is what being a lawyer entails because, you know, and going back to Suits, like that is how it looks on TV too. Like,
did you get through all those files in one night?
Well, I would have done it faster, but I ordered a pizza.
A lot of the exemplars of like the legal workplace, they're there till like 2 a.m, like eating sushi in the boardroom and all that kind of stuff.
Like it looks fun.
It looks fun until you're doing it every night. And I say this from a place of complete inexperience because I've actually never done that.
Right.
Like the, you know, in-house life has definitely not been like that.
Yeah. Which I'm happy for you.
I am happy. It's, you know, like I had my struggles kind of getting to where I wanted to be. But yeah, I don't know. Not at a huge expense. In some extent, like I was a little bit spoiled, right? In the sense that like I've never been in a truly toxic workplace. Like all the kind of like toxic thoughts was all coming from me. And like I wasn't happy with this. And there was sort of this identity crisis with like being a lawyer, but not being a lawyer and all that kind of thing. Like externally, it was all relatively positive. That's not to say I haven't worked with challenging people. Yeah. Generally speaking, it's actually not been like that.
I'm so happy to hear that. My first job out of articling was horrible. It was super toxic and I lasted 10 months. And I swore that like once I left that place, I was like, I'm never putting up with that again. And thank goodness I haven't had to make that call. And if I could go back and tell myself one thing when I was like a first year associate, it was just like, say no and stand up for yourself. But yeah, you're not gonna. Well, this is just my reality and this is where I work now and this is what it's going to be. Like I kind of felt that way with the way I was being treated. It's just like, this is just the reality of my job. And this is the way it's always going to be. And then you don't realize until you're out of it that like, oh no, that was horrible.
Right. That was horrible. And
But I am lucky. I've also not had anything even close to that since. Like I've been very lucky and I'm really glad to hear you have too, because you're really nice and not that anyone deserves that, but you especially, you just don't deserve that.
Oh, that's so sweet. You too.
But no one does. Like
no one does.
Why? This is something that I grapple with, and I was actually thinking about it the other day. It's just like, what about the law, right? What about working in the law makes people want to violate other people's human rights in the workplace? Like, what is it about those two things that just seem to really... Why can it be so toxic?
Burnout. I feel like people are so burnt out. And like a lot of the people, burnout, I think to some extent, people are burnt out and they're tired and they take that out on the junior staff. Yeah. And the other aspect of it, and I've always sort of had this, I've had this experience a couple times with, you know, bosses I've had who were, you know, less than ideal. Yeah. There's some sense, especially when they're a little bit older, of like, this like generational cycle of workplace trauma. Yeah. It's like, this is how I was hazed in the workplace because this is how I was managed. And so that's all they know. And so that cycle perpetuates.
When your boss screams at you, you never scream back. That's why there's a little thing in corporate America I like to call the chain of screaming.
You know, well, I had to go through this and pay my dues. And so you do too. Maybe this is a stereotype, but at least from the millennials that like we know, the friends of mine who are managers, mostly not lawyers to be honest. I don't actually know a lot of lawyers who manage people.
Oh, okay.
Just because like in a law firm setting, you know, you have associates on your files, but it's not quite like a hierarchical structure. But friends of mine in policy and kind of elsewhere in non-legal roles who manage, like I feel like millennials manage differently than previous generations.
Oh yeah.
We're more cognizant of it in a way that, you know, a little bit more empathetic, a little bit more less of like, well, this is how, like trying to break that cycle of like, this is how we were managed, so this is how I'm going to manage you. And there's more thoughtfulness and, taking care of your employees and not kind of being toxic. And that's a bit of a sweeping generalization, but, based on kind of friends of mine who I know who are managers and how they kind of try to manage their staff.
I agree with you, like across the board, like respect for your outside of work life.
Yes.
Understanding what mental health means, talking about therapy. Like no one's forcing you to talk about anything, but like literally I'll have bosses or managers or directors like open up and be like, oh, I've got family therapy or I've got, this or that or whatever. And they don't expect you to share that, but you kind of know that if you do, it will be accepted.
Okay. Yes, 100%.
Yeah. And I am lucky in that, my last firm and then, when I got my first good job, also at a big company, I worked for people who weren't millennials, but were still amazing. Like I've really friggin' lucked out, like Gen X
I love that.
and up. And I know, I don't want to say it's rare, but I know that isn't the case for everyone.
Yeah.
But there is a different management style for sure.
Yeah.
And I think that now that more millennials are in management and becoming partners and running things a little bit more, having a bit more of a say, I feel like there's a bit of a culture shift.
Yeah, I think so.
But it's going to take a while to like fully take hold. And I know that some people might hate that because like you said, this is how I came up. This is how I came up in law. This is how it's always been. And now it's changing and no one wants to work anymore and all of those like silly tropes. And I think you can have a really good life outside of your job and still be a really good lawyer.
Oh, 100%.
Right? What are you most grateful for that time between finishing articling and coming back to practicing law? Like what was that takeaway or something that you think really made you better what you do now that you might not have had otherwise?
I really like the question because I've thought about it quite a bit over the years. I think there's two aspects to it. First of all, like I think I've just gotten really lucky with certain people along the way who really championed me. Mm-hmm. The other piece of it, I think, is I actually think having not worked or not practicing law for almost 4 years makes me a better lawyer now. Mm-hmm. Because especially within still being in government, like a lot of the people who are my clients now, so to speak, it's not really because it's all the same company, but you know what I mean? Like the people who I'm advising and the departments I'm working with.
Yeah.
I was those people, right? Like over that summer, kind of prior to legalization of cannabis, I flew all over the province and was doing these stakeholder engagement consultations with school boards and municipalities about what the, at the time, government stores would look like and how that framework, wouldn't have a negative impact on the communities and all this sort of thing. And so that was a communications piece, just lots of different work. And it was such a breadth of opportunity for me, public speaking, stakeholder engagement.
Yeah.
Policy development, all this kind of stuff that I wouldn't have had if I'd had that very traditional legal career.
Right.
In hindsight, I really do think all that time makes me a better lawyer because I'm recognized a fair amount by non-legal colleagues for my ability to communicate with them in a way that's not too lawyery.
Right.
And that's something that I just sort of take for granted because I was oh, okay, maybe that's just how I am. But I do really think that comes from having spent so much time working in non-legal roles and being trained by managers who were not lawyers or were lawyers but were not practicing and so had to adapt their own kind of skill sets to these other roles. Yeah.
And in law, we don't just talk with other lawyers.
Right.
Half the people I talk to aren't other lawyers. They're clients, they're insureds, they're adjusters. So you have to know how to communicate with people who haven't gone to law school and who don't read case law for a living.
Yes, 100%.
And I think we forget that a lot of the time. So what did Professor Graham call us? A conduit. Do you remember? Yeah, it was, are we conduits? So are we just a neutral kind of conductor for the law to pass from the legal system to our clients? Or should we be interpreting it and advising on it and changing behaviors? Do you remember that?
Yes, I do remember that.
It was 1L first month, maybe.
Yeah.
Randall, if you're watching this and I'm wrong on the timing, please let me know. He's the definition of being your true self
100%,
and being successful. Yeah. He's an academic as well, but just
totally owning himself. Yes, authentic self.
Love that guy. Was there a defining moment where you were okay, I'm going to try to get back into practicing law? Or was that it sounds like it was more of a constant, you never left that phase, or?
No, I didn't. It was a constant for like the first couple years, and then I just sort of gave up. Honestly, I think the moment came getting closer to legalization.
Right.
Because it started to dawn on me that this was going to be a legal industry, and I had developed all this expertise in it in a way that a lot of other people hadn't yet.
Right.
And so I was like, if I can't get a job practicing law with this, then it's never happening. This is sort of my last kick at the can. This is my litmus test. Like, how valuable is this experience? Can I leverage this in any way? Yeah, I must have sent like 15 emails. That turned into interviews and calls with like 3. Mm-hmm. And then it worked out with 1. The day I got that job, I will never forget it. Like, it was just the most exciting thing. I was like, wow, I have finally gotten a job where the title is counsel. And it was just like, it was so exciting. Like, I remember I was sitting at my desk in my like policy office, and I just like couldn't stop looking at the screen. Like, it was just like so exciting.
Do you feel like you appreciate your job more because there was that question of whether you would get it, and when you got it you were like,
yes,
I'm happy about this, it's not just a given to me anymore?
Yes, 100%. Like, I don't love my job every day. We all have ups and downs. Like, sometimes it can be dull, but yeah, I definitely think I have a heightened appreciation for my job.
Like, your definition of success now versus what it might have been like graduating law school or even going into law school, like, has that changed for you?
Yeah. Like, so significantly. I feel like coming out of law school, my definition of success was to get a job on Bay Street.
Right.
With like associate in the title.
Yeah.
And that is so far from what I think success is now. Like, my idea of being successful as a lawyer was so black and white. Mm-hmm. You know, like there was it was very linear, and there was no kind of understanding of all the things you could do with a law degree that were outside of that kind of linear path, whether within the practice of law, but like different areas, or not practicing law. There's actually a lot of people in our graduating class who do not practice law anymore by choice. Like, a lot.
We're 11 years out, I guess, because
I
know.
It's really old.
But people have left law.
People have left law.
For whatever reason. And I think that if you find your happiness without counsel or associate in the title, I think that's great. Good for you. And if you find your way back to it and get it added again, then that's also great.
And it doesn't mean you're not a lawyer. You know, you are a lawyer who's not practicing. And that was something that coming out of law school, I didn't understand. Like, I had this sort of identity crisis around it. It was like, well, you know, I want to be a lawyer, but I don't really feel like I can say that because I'm not practicing, right? Like, it was so tied up in that.
It's funny how our identities are so tied up in something that we work towards.
Yeah.
You know? And then when you don't get it, you're like, okay, well, who am I outside of this?
Yeah.
Much of your life, like much of my life, was working towards becoming a lawyer. And when I didn't get hired back at articling and I got called to the bar without a job, I felt like I was going through an identity crisis. I'm like, what am I going to do?
Stereotypically, a lot of us are very type A.
Yes.
A little bit uptight, a little bit high strung, right? So there's kind of this element of like needing to have the plan.
Phoebe? What? Do you have a plan? I don't even have a plan.
And needing to kind of have every stepping stone sort of mapped out.
And very competitive with ourselves.
Yes.
Like you said, like you were the one driving yourself, and you were the one putting that pressure on yourself. There's no one else doing it.
Yeah, no, there's no one else doing it. People at work were totally unaware that this was my internal struggle.
Right.
My family was very supportive.
Right.
My friends, quite frankly, didn't care. I think most of them were very jealous that I was not in the office until like 2 a.m, like getting my Uber shit home, right?
And that's the same. Like, I wasn't at my call to the bar ceremony with my parents being like, our daughter's a failure. They were so proud.
Yeah.
So I think so much of the pressure that we put on ourselves, I mean, in life in general, but especially as lawyers, is all internal. And if we just gave ourselves a little bit of a break, maybe sometimes.
Oh yeah, 100%. It's cliche, but like, you are your own harshest critic, and that's a saying, for good reason. Like, it's true.
It is. Because look at the people in your life that you love, and if they were in the same situation you were in, you wouldn't be judging them.
No,
you wouldn't think
not
lesser
at
of
all.
them. You wouldn't be like, what a loser, right?
It's hard to kind of see it at the time, you know?
It's hard to see when you're in it, just like most things. So if you could, I guess, go back or give a piece of advice to someone who kind of was in that position, just like graduating law school, either unsure of what you want to practice or unsure if you want to practice, or maybe not having something lined up, like both of us, like if you could go back and give either of us that advice, like what would it be?
And I've given this advice recently, and
Learn
it doesn't
Mandarin.
deviate.
No, I'm kidding.
Learn Mandarin. No, I think I told you this not here, but for a couple of years I taught at law school. I taught cannabis law and policy, of course. And so the last class we'd leave a bit of time for the students just like ask us things, and mostly they were questions about the cannabis industry and ridiculous questions about when like psilocybins are going to be legal.
Right.
We don't know.
We don't know. You've heard it here. We don't know.
We don't know. But then we'd always leave some of it to that kind of thing. And my answer would always be open-minded and don't, just look at the obvious door. Like there are opportunities that are going to present themselves that are not going to seem, precisely what you thought you had in mind for your career, but you never really know when something is going to turn into something so much more. And for me, it was that original policy job, like doing the kind of grocery store stuff. Like I could have turned that down and kept looking for jobs, and I would have ended up probably in an okay job. Eventually, I'm sure I would have landed somewhere. But that job was sort of my stepping stone into an industry. Like cannabis wasn't even legal when we were in law school.
No.
It wasn't an industry at all.
No.
And so it's like you never really know where those opportunities are going to come from and kind of shape opportunities and shape kind of whole careers. Like opportunities will come up and things will arise that like you can't foresee. So, be open-minded and expect the unexpected. It's simple, but sometimes that's kind of all you need to hear to have that reinforced that like, things will work out in a way. And it may not be the way that you expected them to, and it may not be the way that you planned, but they will work out in a way.
We would have some teachers tell us like the jobs you're going to do, the jobs that some of you are going to have in 20 years, 30 years don't exist yet. And we didn't know what that meant.
Totally.
But I think the same can be said for even law.
Yes.
Like lawyer existed then, it exists now, obviously. But the types of law, there were no cannabis lawyers in Toronto 15 years ago, knowing that the landscape is always changing.
Totally. And like cybersecurity law has gotten a lot more complicated. AI, like, privacy has gotten a lot more nuanced and kind of bigger. Like there's so many areas that like, like I took IP law, a lot of IP law in law school, but I feel like now it would cover like, it would kind of probably get into like AI and like cybersecurity and like things like that just like were not really on anyone's radar.
I didn't even know what intellectual property, I knew what it meant. I didn't know what it was. So I was just like not taking it. Like I wish I could have gone back and been like, take classes that you don't know what they're about yet. Like, I think I didn't know how many different kinds of law were out there, even though they were being offered to us in law school. It's like IP law. I'm like, don't know what that is. Like what'll get me to pass the bar? I figured out after 1L that exams were not my strong suit. Right. Writing exams in that very specific law school, like brain dump format. Right. And so I picked all my classes based on essays so that I could minimize how many of those exams I had. And so like the courses I took were insane. Like they're all over the place. Advanced constitutional law. And we were in the same class. Yeah, we were. Yeah, and they're both judges on the Court of Appeal now. Yes, they're both judges in the Court of Appeal. They were amazing. They were brilliant, brilliant instructors. And that course felt like grad school. They got appointed to the Court of Appeal without ever having been judges on the Superior Court. Yeah, right. I think that's like true. Law school, they made us moot all the time. And you learn after you graduate law school that like mooting is not part of your job a lot of times. Right. Because mooting in law school, it was all appellate, right? All appellate. Like that's not real. Like you'd have to get those trial first. I did some mock trials and that's way more complicated, right? Because you have witnesses and you have jury and all that. Oh, whereas with mooting, did you do that at Western? I did. Did you do mock trials? Oh. Yeah. Got to go to the Court of Appeal actually in first year to do a mock trial in Ottawa. I was the only 1L in the competition. Okay. It was me and a bunch of... Good for you. Thank you. It was terrifying. Another team found out that I was the only 1L and tried to like object to me. Stop. Really? Yeah. And I was the only one they did it to. So I would be doing like my cross or my direct or whatever, and they would like stand up and like be like objection, and then they'd like state some case law. And I'm like, bitch, first of all, like this is a practice. Not the game. We're talking about practice, man. I mean, how silly is that, man? We're talking about practice. Right. Also, you didn't do this to anybody else. You're just hazing the 1L here. Like they won nothing. Love that for you. It was Justice Workington, and she was the best. But she
Amazing.
said very nicely, she was like, you know, I tend to like it when people are allowed to go through the exercise without interruption. And I was sitting there like,
well,
thank you.
Love that. I love that.
I don't have a ton of lawyer friends, and like doing this and connecting with lawyers outside of work and reconnecting with old friends like reminds me that we're all human.
Yeah.
And I think sometimes I want to rebel against the part of me that's a lawyer. Sometimes I just like to forget I'm a lawyer.
Yeah.
Like I need to be able to shut it off.
Yes.
So sometimes I feel like I don't want to necessarily like talk about law in my downtime, but when you talk about it and like there's different ways you can talk about it, right? Like, like the vulnerability and the honesty and all of those things I find really refreshing because when you're standing up in court or when you're talking to a client, you're not standing there talking about all your weaknesses and your fears.
Right. You're putting on your face and you're being your front, you know.
Exactly. But we're all like humans behind that.
Yeah.
And so it's like take off the robes and, well, not literally. I don't know, maybe literally. But do you own robes?
I do.
Do you?
I bought them for the call to the bar, which was so dumb because it's like, when would I ever wear them again?
Yeah, I guess you could rent them if you weren't.
You could, and I should have, quite frankly. But I think at the time it was like, they were so prohibitively expensive regardless. Like $500 to rent and $800 to buy. And I think at the time I was like, well, I don't know that I'm never going to need these. You wear them one more time and you've sort of made it worth it. So I bought them.
I've got enough use out of my robes and your robes.
I was going to say, I assume you wear your robes.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. You know, pre-pandemic, like I was in court like almost every day.
Oh, wow.
Like almost every day. And not just Toronto court. Like I would be driving to Kitchener. I left my place downtown at 4 a.m., drove 4 hours to Brockville, stood up in front of a judge and said, because I was the articling student, and said, yes, we're ready for trial. And he looked at the counsel slip and he goes, are you in Toronto? And I said, yes, Your Honor. And he goes, better get going then.
Oh my God.
And then I drove back and then went and put in like 7 hours at the office. That wasn't like a one-off. That was
That was like pretty standard.
Pretty standard articling at like a very prominent personal injury firm in Toronto.
Crazy.
As a student. Yeah.
Yeah. Nice. One time I had to drive to Leamington. Like the agency offered to pay, like they would have paid for a hotel because it's so far. Leamington's like 6 hours. I was like, no, I'll do it in a day. It's all good. So I woke up at 4 a.m., drove to this hearing. To be fair, I thought the hearing was going to be 2 hours. It ended up being a lot longer than that.
Oh,
but by that point I was there and I didn't have any steps. I was like, okay, well, like I'm clearly driving home. And it was like an awful day. And then it poured rain the whole way back.
Oh, no.
I was so tired. Yeah, it was awful. Like I should have just taken the hotel.
No. It's so funny when you're like young and whatever and eager.
Yeah.
You're like, I can do this.
Like, I can do this.
This is
like,
fine.
I don't need to spend this money on a hotel.
No.
Not that it was my money, but
no,
you
someone
know.
else's money. You think you're doing them a favor.
Right. You think you're doing them a favor and they're like, well, you know, we didn't really care either way.
No. I thought of a question in the bathroom. This is me being unprofessional, but that's okay.
Oh my
no
gosh,
no one's paid me to do this.
Yet. The power of yet. The power of yet. Yet.
Oh yeah. I got it. What is one thing that people might be surprised to learn about you? Well, you run a book club.
Yes, I do run a book club. But maybe it is surprising when people find out about it at work. I don't talk about myself a lot at work.
Okay.
I'm very, kind of, so I guess it is surprising to people.
Or just that you want to keep reading outside of work when you're done reading for work.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. I love to read. I run a book club. Have run the same book club for 10 years.
Holy cow.
Which is kind of exciting.
Oh my God.
That it's gone on that long. And like a few people have come and gone, mostly based on geography.
Right.
Usually a little snotty about books. And like I was not previously into romance. I'm not into romance otherwise.
No.
I like fantasy, but very like light fantasy. Like Harry Potter. Nothing where you like need a glossary of characters to understand what's going on.
Yeah, I'm the same. I'm the same.
Right? If there's a glossary and a map that you're reliant on, I'm out.
I don't need lineage.
Right.
Once there's lineage, I'm done.
Yeah, too complicated.
Yep.
This is no mere ranger. He is Aragorn, son of Arathorn. You owe him your allegiance.
There's too many ofs.
Yeah.
Like, I don't need that. Yeah.
Our book club, I'd say, there's a lot of diversity to what we read, which I appreciate, both in terms of authorship, like, you know, female authors, like BIPOC authors, but also genre. Like,
right.
We'll read Onyx Storm, but then once in a while we'll also like go back and read a classic. Like we read Little Women last year.
Oh, nice.
I was actually surprised people voted for that. It was my suggestion, and people were like, "Yeah, sure, let's give it a go." Never actually read it, unabridged.
You know, it's funny. I actually read something the other day that was like a funny review of Little Women, and it was just like just a bunch of people going to each other's houses.
It's not true. But isn't that life? Isn't that friendship?
That's
a bunch of people going to each other's houses.
That's everything. That's community.
Yeah.
What are we doing in life if you're not going to people's houses?
Yeah.
Yeah. But I will hate finish a book.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Which I need to stop doing.
I stopped doing that a while ago.
Did you?
Yeah.
Good for you.
I got a 50-page cutoff.
See, you're
but that's hard. You really have to get into that.
You need a system.
Yeah, you need a system because otherwise it's like, oh, but maybe it'll get better. Like all these people said it was so good. Like I should be getting something on this book, but there's too much to read. There's too much you're going to love. Why force yourself through something that you are not loving?
You're absolutely right. And for me, it's stubbornness. And it's like the sunk cost fallacy.
Right,
and then it's the,
especially if you bought the book.
Especially if you bought the book. Or if someone lent it to you and they're like, you're going to love this.
Fair.
And then you're like, I didn't.
Right.
Okay, so this is my random question that I like to ask.
Beans is so random. And public schools are so random.
If you could choose between teleportation and mind reading, which one would you choose and why? To have for the rest of your life?
I think the obvious answer is teleportation because it's a lot more fun. You get a lot of adventure out of it. But I think I personally would choose mind reading.
Okay. And how come?
I always find it very interesting to, you know, get to know people and listen to people's stories and, you know, hear kind of how friends and acquaintances and colleagues and whoever else you meet in life want to present themselves. Mm-hmm. But how people present themselves is, you know, not always what they're really thinking. And I'm kind of a nosy person. Like I'm curious. I consider myself very trustworthy. I'm a good secret keeper, which is a good combination with nosies, but I like to know things.
Yeah.
And I like to know people and know things about people. And so I feel like I would just find mind reading so fascinating. I think it'd be a huge burden because you'd be holding all these like, you know, people's troubles and traumas, but you'd also hear their like happy thoughts and all those kinds of things too. And just like to have kind of like unfiltered access to that, I think would be really fascinating.
Money, sex, money, sex, cat.
That's such a like lovely answer. And because you wouldn't abuse it.
No,
like,
I wouldn't abuse it. It would just be for intake.
Yeah, intake and curiosity.
Yeah.
Edward in Twilight is a mind reader, and I didn't mean to ask a Twilight related question, but here we are.
Oh, that's funny.
I know what you are.
See, I think the only reason that I would want to be a mind reader is because people probably aren't judging you as much as you think they are, and it would be nice to have that. But then when they are, that would suck too.
That's true. That would suck. You just be like, oh, thanks. That's
or maybe
really
you're
cool.
just like, oh, I was right. This was really nice. I hope you had a good time.
I had a great time. Thank you so much for having me. This was a lot of fun.
Thank you for taking time away from your family and your home and your book merch.
It was a privilege.
To come your cozy new book merch to come. And thank you so much for the gift. I'm literally going to put it on.
Oh, you're welcome.
As soon as we're done, I'm going to like take off the top half of my jumper and put it on and be that person.
I love that. I'm so happy you like it.
I can't get something new and not wear it. So it was really thoughtful of you. And yeah, you're just the best. Thank you, Catherine.
You too.
All right. That was my talk with Catherine. And if you've stuck around this far, aren't you glad you did? She's the best. Please share this video with a lawyer you know, or a non-lawyer, or an ex-lawyer in your life who you think might enjoy a little virtual community of people who just might understand what they're going through. And until next time, bye. Done. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was so nice.
That was really nice. Oh, Andrew's scooting.
No. You know what's so funny? I've never seen any of this because like I listen to every episode of your podcast. This is the thing about this. I'm on Spotify, so I've never seen it.
And the blowfish. So that's
oh my gosh, that's adorable.